I welcome to the stage the first member of our next panel, Mark Tesseyman, the CEO of LIWA Trading Enterprises, Anamika Priyadarshi, the head of marketing of Jashanmal. We have Anup Kondakundi, the head of marketing strategy and brand transformation at Ajmal Perfumes, Amardeep Devadason, Senior Vice President and Head of Global Brand Solutions at RRD Go Creative, and your moderator, someone new for you to listen to this afternoon, Anurima, the Executive Editor of Images RetailME.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me here. Let's run a quick round of introduction with all four of you. And probably at the end of the introduction, tell us one word that you think is an appropriate word to qualify a Gen Z. One word. Yeah. Mark, you want to start?
Good afternoon, everybody. Should we start with hands up if you're a Gen Z yourself? Do you just about qualify? Come on, everyone's bending the rules a little bit. Well, I'm either fortunate or unfortunate enough to have two children. One is Gen Z and one's a millennial. So my ex-wife said to me, "They're both crazy. You know, look after them," because they're a real. You know, they're very, very different in terms of their mindset. 10 years apart. Their shopping behaviours are distinctly different. Their belief sets are actually quite different. And I think the word I would describe both of them is a little bit fickle.
Okay.
A bit fickle.
That's a nice word, fickle. Okay, next, Anamika.
Hi, everybody. My name is Anamika. I head marketing for the Jashanmal group. If you ask me to describe a millennial or a Gen Z, I would say experiential. They are suckers for experience. If it is an experience, then they want it. Everything has to be experience-based. And this is what, when we were listening to other people, especially the guys with gaming experience and all, this is what even I understood. It is all about what I can experience, how I can experience, and that's what they're looking for.
Lovely. Experiential, fickle. Now you go.
Right, my name is Amar. I lead creative and digital. We call it Global Brand Solutions for RRD. I describe Gen Z as fluid. It's adjacent but not quite the same. Fluid because of how quickly attention spans vary. You move from one point to the other, which is a challenge for a brand. It's tough to be a brand in this generation because you've got to first attract the attention, which is tough, and then retain the attention, which is well-nigh impossible. So it's tough to be a brand.
Great. Anup, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anup, and I head marketing for Ajmal Perfumes. You saw the brand film of Ajmal some time back today. So the word that really comes to my mind when I think of Gen Zs, and we were just discussing some time back, we've been researching on Gen Zs for the past couple of years. Because they are and they will obviously in the near future continue to be our consumers. We've looked at inclusivity, we've looked at diversity, all of these terms really come alive, and sustainability obviously come alive when you think of Gen Zs. But one word that really comes to my mind is conscious. And I think Gen Zs are far more conscious today as consumers of products as compared to the generations before them. So conscious for me is one word, and I think that is where brands really need to reinvent themselves to be more conscious of the communication that they're really, reaching out to the audiences with.
Lovely. So we have a persona for the Gen Z. They are fickle, they are experimental, they are conscious, and they're fluid. So that's a very big factor. But I think it's a little contradictory also. We are personifying them on a lot of positives and negatives. So I'll start with Anup. So that's a challenge. So how are you solving your marketing prospects with the Gen Z? How are you communicating with them?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Anurima, because as a brand, we've been in existence for the past 7 decades. And I was just mentioning some time back, we've been a leader in perfumes in this part of the world for quite some time now. And for the first time ever, we are in the journey of brand transformation, right? We've never had to really transform, as in the word transform, before. Because we felt that consumers typically would pass down their brand awareness to their next generation, and thereby it becomes far more easier for us to really drive. So in today's scenario, if a brand is in existence for the past 2 decades or more, they're obviously doing something right, but you've not seen too many businesses really live that long. And for us, obviously, at this point in time, we are in a juncture where we're really trying to reinvent, transform, so that we become more relevant, and awareness no longer from a brand funnel perspective really matters, right? It's all about brand consideration, the next level of brand funnel. And that is where, pretty much all the brands are really trying to reach out to this specific audience with relevant communication, the mode of communication. While we are all talking about the fact that Gen Zs are the ones that were born entrenched in digital media, again, they are the ones who are more conscious of the fact that what is an influencer communicating to them. So I think for us, we are obviously in the verge, and for us, we feel that it is still important for us to communicate the brand story. We are fortunate enough to have a brand story that is rich in legacy for 70 years. And we want to be clean and clear in communicating that, rather than really reinventing the wheel and creating a unique selling proposition of sorts. If you're able to communicate that very clearly to the Gen Zs, to the current audience, I think we've really done half the job there to be able to win them.
So it is basically simple narrative. So what Amar touched upon, they are fluid, so you have to convince them in a very easy way.
Absolutely.
So let's take it to that. And now, Anamika, if you can give me another side of it, since Jashanmal has a varied price point also on board, so there's a lot of task for you.
True. Taking my cue from Anup, they are a 70-year-old brand. We are a 103-year-old brand, so even more older. And when we have the millennials or the Gen Zs coming into shop, they would be like, oh, my grandmother used to shop here. My mother used to shop here, but what about you? I am undecided or fluid, I want to experiment. I want to explore. And that's what got us thinking that, we need to probably relook at our stores. And that led to a whole new, store design, which was more modern, more touch and feel. We introduced concepts like lift and learn. Because we always, when the Gen Z come, they don't want to talk to the sales supervisor or the sales associate. They have already done their homework. They know what they are looking for. They're very clear. And they just want to come and explore things on their own. They don't want to, they don't want somebody behind them explaining to them how it works. No, I have done my homework. I know. I have been on Discord. I've been on, other places, and I've seen what I want. I'm very clear. I've come to experiment. I've come to explore, and then I'll make my choice. And that's what we saw when we changed our format of the stores. We brought in a lot of these new people, and we gave them an opportunity to explore, and that led to, having some good customers made.
Correct. So Mark, exploration is one factor, simplicity of narrative is one factor, but you also mentioned they are fickle. So you have to catch their attention. So are you doing something special to kind of get them on board?
Well, we have a number of challenges in that we used to be a traditional franchisee business. Since COVID, we changed our business model completely. So we're now about 65% of the units we sell are our own label. So we've started to develop our own labels and our own brands. So let me ask one question, if anybody's can answer it. What's the average lifespan of a retail brand, do we think? Average lifespan of a retail brand? 10 years, 15 years, 20, 25, 30, 35? 6 is, try 16. 16 years is kind of the average. So if you think about that in the life cycle of a retail business and how many times you have to reinvent yourself, brands that have been around for 150 plus years, you have to evolve with your consumer. So, and if you don't do that, you'll die. I mean, it's just a simple thing. So in LIWA, we're developing our new own label businesses. One of them is a lingerie business called Isla and Evie. So we have taken quite a lot of time to evaluate. We looked at the market because you've got Victoria's Secrets and you've got La Senza, which is ours, by the way. And then we looked at lots of other sub-brands that were in lingerie, and we identified that there was a gap requirement. So we conceived Isla and Evie. And it is kind of targeted at that Gen Z customer because they're a very different shopping group. Now, 32% of the global population are Gen Z. So now that number has risen quite quickly. 32% is a very big number. They've got $2.3 trillion of spending power, which will grow. They will definitely start to spend more money. But you need to engage with them in a particular way. So you have a problem with them. Gen Z have been called the most depressed generation and the ones that are most prone to anxiety because they worry about everything. They worry about everything. So nothing's perfect. There's always a problem somewhere, but there's always opportunities. And the other, I think there's also some also things you have to build into your brand DNA when you start to talk to these consumers. It links to our strategy as a business where we have a database. About 50% of our total sales as a group come from our database. Now, interestingly, 36% of that 50% comes from Gen Z. So that's actually a big tick. So that, for me, tells me that we're actually doing something that is kind of a positive in our CRM relationship with that 36% of the loyal database that we do have. And it's kind of in line with the mix of the Gen Zs that are in the world at 32%. So how do you do it, though? How do you keep them engaged? Because you have to do it in a slightly different way because they are fickle. You know, they want slightly different things. So sustainable shopping is quite important. So sustainability, the previous panel presentation was all talking about sustainability. And there is a bit of an elephant in the room in that it was mentioned whether or not people are prepared to pay for it and so on and so forth. Gen Zs will. They will pay for it. They'll pay a little bit more for it, and that's statistically proven. You have to remove barriers to engagement with a Gen Z. So, for example, fast, seamless shopping is a prerequisite. Everything has to be really smooth. So the idea of going to a bank, for example, is alien to them. They just won't go to a bank. Everything has to be seamless online. The merger of online and physical storytelling has got to be seamless. They've got to have that omnichannel experience. Now, actually, I don't think we're doing a good enough job in that area yet. It's something that we need to do significantly better at. The more worrying thing for me when we did a bit of the research was that Gen Zs trust influencers above anybody else. Now, that is a bit worrying if you're trying to liaise directly with a consumer-facing retail business. So they'll believe influencers above brands, retailers, and celebrity, and their own parents.
Yeah.
So parents come last in that cycle, which is also a little bit worrying. And they're demanding of engaging content at every touch point. Demanding of engaging content. And they don't give you very many chances. Yeah. So at the minute, I've got a bit of a beef in our business about the way that we're communicating through social media, whilst trying to build brand. You know, build a new brand DNA. How do you do it and retain engagement? Because it's critically important. I think we're doing it okay at a transactional level, but it worries me that we're not doing enough in terms of building it for the future. The other thing that I think is quite interesting is they've got no patience. Zero patience. So if a website is slow or the UX is poor, your chance is gone. Yeah. Your chance is gone. So another fickle part. So I'm going through this long list with my leadership team. We were talking about it yesterday. And I'm looking around the room and you can clearly see that there's a few worried faces about how do you actually plan for the future. Bearing in mind you've got 16 years. You've got 16 years on average to establish a brand. You've got to unravel all these things and make sure you've got a business that's moving forward. Now, we're fortunate in that our Isla and Evie business, we're selling some of the product through other channels, has been running now for about 18 months. And it's a $12 million business already. So I think we must be doing something right. But there's so much more to do, bearing in mind that you've got the Gen Z as 36% of that shopping population.
Correct, correct. So, Amar, he has already set that example, and that's rocking. But you tell us from because you are the one who gives solution to brands. So, you give us a few use cases wherein you've seen it working for brands when they have done the marketing right to catch the attention of the Gen Z, you know?
I think ultimately it boils down to brand storytelling and creating those moments of impact. Because with the short attention span and with the zero patience Mark talked about, what's important for us to understand is that the storytelling is not linear. Brands, why it's tough to be a brand is because this generation is not going to buy from a brand they don't identify with. This is a purpose-driven generation. This is a value-oriented generation. Like Anup pointed out, they have a very, very strong conscience. So the storytelling has got to be personalized. You've got to leverage technology. And some of the best Gen Z brands are not what the usual suspects that we'd normally want to think about without naming any names on the... So take, for example, Elf Cosmetics. Elf Cosmetics is a Gen Z brand. And the way they go about marketing is, first of all, they speak a certain language. So you move away from talking about product launches, you talk about drops, and then you create that community factor. The influencer component is so important, but the focus is shifting from influencer marketing to stakeholder marketing, and that all boils down to communities. So a brand that's nailing it has got the community story right, is able to engage in the spaces where this generation operates, whether it's in the Discords, whether it's in Twitch. You have a brand story that resonates, and above all, if you are a brand that consistently takes a stand, they're going to come back and listen to you. The funny thing about stands, though, is today's cause might be the whales, tomorrow's cause might be the panda, and the day after will be the environment. That keeps shifting. So that's why your CRM, that's why your data, and that's why your analytics piece is very, very important to be able to personalize content and messaging. Brands that do that are brands that are going to keep that 30 to 40%, which ensures that they'll stay viable over the next 5 years.
Correct, correct. So Anup, earlier today we were discussing how it is debatable that whether they're loyal to a brand or not, but Gen Z it has a fandom. They do follow a lot of brands also. So, you know, how do you crack the code? Where is that thin line that you see?
So like I was saying some time back, you know, Gen Zs probably for the first time in all the generations so far, pretty much every individual in the Gen Z is an opinion leader, right? They're obviously born in the tech era, so they've seen pretty much what's happening around the world, and because of which they've obviously formed their own opinions. They know for a fact that sustainability is the way to go moving ahead. They are probably the flag bearers of sustainability. We spoke about ESG, sustainability. That's the buzzword right now. One thing that we've seen in the perfume industry, and I'm referring particularly to this because I've in the recent past seen this happening a lot, is that they're very conscious of the entire value chain. And when I say value chain, because you know, we believe and we keep harping of the fact that we are a farm to fragrance brand, we believe that it is important for us to also communicate that brand story of our origination of all the ingredients that are used in our perfumes to the quality checks that happen till the time the bottling and then post-production. Now this communication probably to some extent mattered in the earlier generations, which is millennials, probably Gen Ys, but Gen Zs are far more knowledgeable about this. They want to understand this. They probably will walk into your store and talk about those ingredients that they've already identified. And one of the reasons why some conscious perfume brands are already putting up ingredients and talking about that one specific ingredient that is sustainable and natural in their entire list of ingredients used for the perfume. So one way that we are obviously doing, you know, really circumventing this is by being true to our brand story. We are communicating as clearly as possible what we stand for. It's not about packaging it in the right words and telling it. It's just being as clean as you can from a communication standpoint. And the second, obviously, is factoring in the base ingredients, the product, and then thereby, like my partners mentioned here, that you know, you obviously using influencers to be able to do that far more because they are influenced by influencers. It is very evident today that they do not follow what their parents believe, right? In fact, they are the ones who, on the reverse, influence their parents and their family members to think of what they believe is right. And I think that is happening even more. So we are also witnessing that in our stores. We are seeing that the Gen Zs or the audiences that we are talking to are coming and in fact influencing their parents to buy. So I think that is where we are also seeing a lot of loyalty and then advocacy coming in from a brand funnel point of view. And we want to you know, leverage on that going forward. So we'll continue to do that.
Perfect. So that's a brownie point. So Anamika, you have touched upon the fact that you had to change your store design to make it more experiential. And obviously for you, it matters when you think of Gen Z as a marketer. But what about the shopping channels? Mark also mentioned that they need similar experience all across channels. So How, do you get the same when you are treating the Gen Z path online and as well as offline, or how's it? They experience it online, come offline? What do you think?
Yes, it is a mix, you know. We have seen, because we do personalization and we follow the journey of the customers, we have seen, you know, customers shop offline or see online and then make a purchase online, or vice versa. There is a very, you know, a fluid movement that we see of the customer, and they are looking for options. They want options at every point. To make a decision, they want an option. To make a payment, they want an option. They want to know whether I can do a BNPL, whether I can, you know, what are my options, whether I can do an installment, whatever it is. They are very, very opinionated, extremely opinionated. Right opinion, wrong opinion, that's a secondary thing, but extremely opinionated. And they exercise that opinion at every point of time.
Correct.
At every, you know, right from starting the journey till the end of the journey, they have an opinion, and they say that rightfully, I have the money, I have an opinion, and you have to listen to me.
Correct, correct. But we also mentioned sometime during the panel that they don't like to be nudged or told what they have to do. But I'm sure when they're shopping online, there's a serious case of cart abandonment also, because they are attention deficit. So any of you can take that up and tell me how interestingly you turn those cart abandonments into a shopping, like making it, yeah.
You know, again, this is something very interesting. You have to use their language. As, you know, rightly said by Ravi, you have to use their language. You cannot say that you've abandoned your cart. You know, you cannot say, let me nudge you back. No, you have to use their lingo. You have to talk to them of how you want to bring them back, very, you know, in their style, and very, very carefully nudge them to come and shop again. Without sounding obtrusive, because the moment they feel that, you know, they're being pushed, they will back away, and they will never come back to you.
So will we have a new marketer's guide for Gen Z, a new lingo kind of a book that you all are going to write? All of you can contribute to that book.
You're going to have to, because the language that was valid 5 years ago it has zero validity today. So we see brands doing interesting things, but then one thing that to give everyone hope, right? What's valued is authenticity.
Yeah.
So if that authenticity factor, these guys can see through the fluff in like 2 seconds flat. I think David was talking about it, like the mistake brands make is you convert your physical into digital, or you take a 2-dimensional digital and try and make it 3D, and then that's where it just fails at that point. So cart abandonment is something that you will always see, but then what brands are doing right now is they are using drops, and they're using messaging from the cart to actually gently aid that buying process. What this generation has done very well is they've separated the physical and the digital, and we need to keep that in mind. We should not be always trying to combine the two. So they see digital value, and then they convert that into a physical experience. So if you're able to crack your messaging to sort of bring that component in, then the choice is in their hands. So to Anamika's point, it's got to feel that they made the decision based on good input you gave them. So once again, I'll just keep saying it's tough to be a brand in this current environment.
Yeah. Anup, any thoughts on that?
Hello. So I think he's pretty much summed it up for me as well. Like I said, you know, it is over so many decades, we've never really looked at transforming, you know, because we've always felt that, you know, as a brand, if you have the necessary awareness, it's a good rider for you to really grab the attention and then eventually get consumers to come in. Honestly, I'm still trying to understand the Gen Zs. Nobody, I think, here really understands them as much to really get the immediate attention and then thereby footfalls or the traffic on the websites. But the fact of the matter is that there's no one answer to grabbing their attention, right? While obviously a lot of brands are using influencers, a lot of brands are using gamification. We heard about gamification, right? And one way to really capture the attention in the entire flow of their process, the purchase process, is to gamify it, because like we all know, they don't have as much attention as probably they would end up spending. And we've done this bit of research as well, where we've seen how much time do a typical consumer, after the click-through rate happens, after they click through a particular link on the website, how much do they typically end up spending on the website? And Gen Zs are far lower in terms of spending time. So if you're able to really gamify the process of the entire, process of them being online, I think it really works for them to eventually go to cart and then buy through. So I think for me, that is probably one direction in which quite a lot of brands online would be preferring to.
I think we've all got the problem. So again, I asked this question of my leadership team yesterday. If you check your own screen time now, in a week, what your screen time is now compared to what it was 5 years ago, I bet it's quantumly more than it would have been in years ago. And there's already brand, I think there's lots of case studies that will be written about over the years in terms of the way that brands have handled this well and handled this poorly in terms of the transition of consumer and brand development. So I hope there's nobody here from this particular brand, but I'll mention it anyway. Victoria's Secrets. They got caught out by their consumer, ultimately. Caught out by their consumer because the consumer didn't buy the whole angel thing anymore. They didn't buy it. So they decided to vote with their feet. And obviously the brand had to change direction markedly. And to be fair to them, I think they've done a pretty good job in quite a reasonably short period of time. But that's 5 or 6 years ago. So they've had to reinvent their whole DNA as a business to make sure that they've got the engagement back. Otherwise, they would have some significant problems. Now, the leader of that business, by the way, was 84. So you could arguably have said, and I've met him several times, you could arguably say, well, actually, was he in touch and ingrained with the consumer at the front end? So, and he used to have a saying, he used to say, all the answers are in the stores. And he was probably right in terms of the way the stores looked. The bit that he missed was actually talking to the consumer. He forgot to talk to the consumer because they would have told him if if they'd been prepared to listen. And actually, if you look at Gen Zs and that you ask about their brand advocacy, and the brands that come out number one. Now, admittedly, this was a US survey. But Nike came out as the number one brand, by far. It was double as popular as the second, because the way that they do their end-to-end proposition resonated completely with the Gen Z population. And I get it, right from what they're wearing, to the behaviors, to the sustainability, to the welfare side of things. I think they've done a pretty amazing job, actually. Second was Apple. And again, you get that from the tech perspective because they're so ingrained in technology. If anything that's new is coming around, so you can kind of understand that. The third one was Amazon. Now, interestingly, Amazon had dropped from number one over 3 years. And the general belief is that Amazon is beginning to get worked out in terms of all the background stuff that Gen Zs feel so strongly about. So it'll be interesting to see, I think, where Amazon will sit in the next 3, 4, 5 years if the same survey is being done. But whilst we're worrying about Generation Zs, you might as well worry about Generation Alpha, because they're coming, and they might be quite small now, but believe you me, they've got some strong opinions of their own already.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the conversation is only getting started, but we are running out of time and Lee has already signaled me. So we can take this off stage and whoever wants to join us. But lovely talking to you guys. There's so much to learn. And thanks until we meet next time. Yeah.